Hi everyone, Mike here with another Massive Darkness video. This time I'll be painting Elias the Wizard, and I'll be doing a basic object source lighting on him. So I've started by completely priming Elias in black, then I'm using Corax white primer and spraying down at a 45-degree angle from his right side. This is going to highlight the areas that would be lit up by the orb on his staff. So this is how he looks after the Corax white is added. I gave him 2 or 3 short zaps with the paint, and someday I swear I'll get an airbrush and make this easier, but for now it's the poor man's Zenithal Prime for me. Now this is going to be a very simple OSL effect, in that there's one large light source and the light coming from it is white. So if you've never done OSL, I think this is a good one to start off with. The primer has already marked out the areas that will be lit up by the staff. Now we're going to paint over those. I'm putting out 3 colors. First a dark blue, and then a light blue-gray, and then I'm making a midway color by mixing half and half. Then each is getting an equal amount of water added to it. I'm going to start with a dark blue, and I'm painting over the areas that received the black paint. This will take a couple layers, but I want the paint thin. Thinner paints are easier to layer over each other. A really useful tip that I picked up from great painters like Shoshi Bauer and James Wappel is to start early with the OSL. Don't leave it until the end as your last step. If you're just doing something really small, like a candle flame, it doesn't really matter, but if you want the light source to be a focal point for your miniature, then start with that. Next I'm moving on to the lighter blue, and now I'm filling in all the areas that got the light primer. You don't need to blend this into the darker color, but it can't hurt to overlap it a bit at the edges. You can also grab a bit of the middle color and muddle the line where they touch. For the most part though, you won't really need to do this. If you see areas that are gray because they got a bit of the white but are still mostly black, you can use the middle color on those spots as well. The most obvious place that you'll need to use the middle color for blending is on the hat, where it's a smooth curving surface. Put the light and dark colors where they should go, then put the middle color between them and tweak each side a bit until it has a smooth change from light to dark. So here is Elias so far. The next thing I want to do is to darken the shadows. With OSL, you want nice dark shadows to contrast with the light. I'm going to use some black contrast paint mixed with water. If you don't have this, just use a watered down black paint. This is going into all the grooves of the robes, whether they're in the lighter areas or the darker ones. For the lighter areas, you might want to start off with your dark blue first, and then continue to darken the shadows using the black. I'm also adding this color to the side of the body that's opposite the light, and to the underside of the robes, places where very little, if any, light would be hitting. The next thing I'm going to do is highlight the darker areas using the middle blue color. Not a lot, just a thin glaze of this over the raised folds in the cloth. This is how it looks so far. Once the paint is dry, I'll go back and do some touch-ups where needed. Now I'm going to do the same thing on all the leather bits with 2 different brown colors. I'm starting with a dark brown, and I'm painting all of the areas that have the black primer. I'm then going to follow that up with some light brown on all the lighter areas. The areas with the leather are small enough that you probably don't need a middle brown color for blending. So as you can see here, I'm using this on the belt, the pouches, and also the straps on the hat and the wrists. Now moving on to the skin colors. I'll be using a light flesh color for this, but I'll be creating 3 different variations of it. First the original color, then a dark version by adding a dark brown, and a highlight color by adding some white. Once again, I'll be using the primer colors as my guide, but unlike with the robes and the leather, I'm putting 2 layers of the darkest flesh color over the entire face. There's a lot of small details on the face, and it's easier just to paint the entire thing with a shadow color and then highlight up from there. The hands are bare, so I'll be painting those with the dark skin color as well. Once that's dry, I'm using the middle skin color to paint the right side of the face and the nose. I'm leaving the eyes dark, however. I want there to be a shadow over the eyes. I'm also painting the top of the fingers and the hands. Finally, I'll take the lightest skin color and paint the tip of the nose and the right cheekbone, as well as the top of the hand that's holding the staff. For the beard and hair, I'll be using a very light gray and a dark gray, and I'm actually just going to highlight what's already there. For the areas with the light primer, I'm painting the top of the strands of the hair with Ulthuan gray. For all the hair that's in shadow, I'm highlighting it with Scavenblight Dinge. Next, and I could have done this sooner, I want to add a wash to the skin and leather. I'm putting this over the eyes and a bit on the forehead to darken those areas since they are under the shadow of the hat. I'm also putting it between the fingers and into the folds of the leather. The boots are getting one layer of watered down Scavenblight Dinge, and I'm letting the primer do the shading for me. Next I'm painting the staff. Starting with the shaft, I'm painting the bottom half black and the top half with Scavenblight Dinge. Where the two colors meet, I'll mix them together right on the staff. I want the head of the staff to be a nice bright white, so I'm first base coating it with Corax white, and then I'm adding a layer or two of white scar. Then, just to make it look like there's a light shining here, I'm dry brushing the ridges at the top of the staff with some Corax white. I'm also going to add a bit of white to the top of the sleeve here. Next I'm adding a few layers of a very watered down electric blue to the bottom half of the head of the staff. The one I'm using here is blue Fluorescent from Vallejo, but it's a terrible paint, so use an electric blue or techless blue watered down to a thin glaze. I'm going to put a little of this onto the ridges on the staff as well. Next I'm going to paint the sword, and I'm starting with Rhinox hide. I'm using this to cover all of the shadowed areas of the sword. I chose a dark brown just because it's a good contrast for a bright blue. For the blade, I'll be mixing up three colors: gunmetal, then my same dark blue mixed with gunmetal, and then gunmetal, blue, and black mixed in equal proportions. The top third of the lit side of the blade will be the darkest color, the middle third will be the next lightest color, and pure gunmetal for the bottom third. Next I'm doing an edge highlight on the top edge and the center ridge using shining silver. Then I'm painting the lit up part of the crossguard with a bright gold color and edge highlighting the dark part of the crossguard with the same gold. And for the belt buckle, I'm just using some more gunmetal. Next I want to add some dirt and grime to Elias. Right now all the blue is a bit plain to look at. I'm using the same colors that I used for the leather, but I've watered them down to a wash, so probably 2 to 3 parts water to 1 part paint. I'm starting with the lighter brown and marking out where I want the dirt to go. Then I'm switching to the darker brown and splashing that all around the bottom of the robes. Now, if you look at the shadow that Elias is casting in these pictures, that's not actually shadow, that's the black primer. After I add mud to the base, I want to duplicate that look. After my earth texture is dried, I'm adding a layer of Agrax Earthshade to the entire thing. Once that dries, I'm dry brushing, I guess, a Pac-Man shape around Elias, where Elias would be inside the mouth. The color I'm using for the dry brush is Zandri dust, which is a really light khaki color. Now I'm using a black wash, and I'm making a dark triangle of shadow under Elias. And that's it. As I said before, this is a very basic, simple OSL effect. I didn't want this miniature to be too dramatic, otherwise he'd look odd next to the other heroes. If you do want a more pronounced OSL, then you could use only the dark blue for highlights outside this circle. Then, on the outside of this circle, use only your middle blue color for highlights. And finally, save all your brightest highlights for this tight inner circle. Meanwhile, all of your shadows would still be painted black or nearly black. I won't be doing any of that in this video, but most likely in some future video. Anyway, there you have it, Elias from Massive Darkness, ready to delve into the dungeons of Massive Darkness 2. Thank you to all my patrons for supporting the creation of these videos, and a special thanks to Brian Jones. I'd love to know how many of you are getting Massive Darkness 2. I haven't backed it yet, but I am following it very closely. What are your thoughts on the game? Let me know in the comments. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and thanks for watching.